go, and I've had to create a life for myself without him.
Angela Lansbury's life looked like a Hollywood fairy tale, glittering premieres, standing ovations, and a career that stretched across 8 decades. But behind that poised smile was a woman who survived the kind of darkness most stars never dared to speak about. Long before she became America's beloved Jessica Fletcher, Angela was a 9-year-old girl trapped in a marriage built on a secret she didn't understand, abandoned by a husband who left nothing but a heartbreaking note. And just when she rebuilt her life, Hollywood nearly stole her children, one slipping into drugs, the other pulled toward the deadly orbit of Charles Manson's cult. These weren't scandals. These were battles for survival. What no one knew was that Angela Lansbury escaped Hollywood not to chase fame, but to save her family, and that choice changed everything. And the first twist in her story begins with the marriage that never should have happened. Angela Lansbury's first great heartbreak began long before Hollywood knew her name. At just 19, Angela stepped into a marriage that looked charming on the outside, but was built on a truth she was far too young and inexperienced to understand. Richard Cromwell, handsome, charismatic, older, swept her into a whirlwind romance. Angela believed she was stepping into love. She was actually stepping into a storm. The marriage lasted barely a year before Cromwell disappeared from her life without warning, leaving behind a single note that felt like a blade. "Sorry, I can't go on." The public explanation was absurd rumors claiming he ended the marriage because Angela drank too much tea. But Angela knew something deeper was hiding beneath the surface. When she discovered the truth that Cromwell was a closeted gay man trapped in a brutal Hollywood system, she didn't rage, expose him, or bury him in blame. She chose grace. She carried the heartbreak quietly, learning early that Hollywood was a town built on masks. And this first wound, painful as it was, would shape the resilience she needed for everything that came later. Richard Cromwell has long been a footnote in Hollywood history, but in Angela's life, he was a defining chapter. Cromwell wasn't a villain, he was a man born in the wrong era, forced into the shadows by a town that punished authenticity. In 1940 seconds, Hollywood, being gay wasn't merely difficult, it was a career death sentence. Studios carefully guarded their actors' images, and any whisper of impropriety could destroy a career overnight. Cromwell had spent years living behind a facade, and Angela, young, trusting, sheltered, became the final piece in a lifetime of pretending. When he left her, it wasn't an act of cruelty, it was an act of collapse. His goodbye wasn't meant to cut her, it was meant to protect them both from a truth he couldn't publicly admit. Angela later spoke of the revelation with heartbreaking honesty, saying she had no experience, no understanding, no emotional frame of reference for what happened. Unlike many Hollywood breakups, theirs didn't end in bitterness. Cromwell remained someone she cared about until his death, and Angela carried that lesson forward. Sometimes people break, not because they're bad, but because the world refuses to let them be who they really are. Peter Shaw was the opposite of Richard Cromwell in every way, steady, loyal, grounded, not in illusion, but in reality. Angela Lansbury met Peter after the emotional wreckage of her first marriage, and instead of sweeping her off her feet, he offered something far more rare in Hollywood: stability. Their marriage lasted 54 years, a near impossible feat in an industry fueled by ego, temptation, and reinvention. Peter didn't just love Angela, he understood her. He knew her ambition, her softness, her insecurities, and the immense emotional depth that allowed her to disappear into characters. Together, they built a home, raised children, and created a life that had nothing to do with the spotlights outside their door. What made their marriage unbreakable wasn't the romance, it was the partnership. Peter was the man who stood with her through tragedies, through relocations, through the darkest moments of parenthood. And when Hollywood demanded more than it had ever given, it was Peter who became the anchor that kept Angela from drowning in fame and expectation. He wasn't the leading man on screen, he was the leading man in her life. Deirdre Shaw's story is the chapter of Angela Lansbury's life that still shocks Hollywood insiders to this day. During the late 1960s, a time when Los Angeles was boiling with counterculture, drugs, and charismatic predators, Deirdre fell into the wrong crowd. Not just any wrong crowd. She drifted toward the gravitational pull of Charles Manson himself. Manson had a gift for identifying vulnerable young people, and Deirdre, curious and impressionable, was precisely the kind of soul he preyed on. Angela later revealed with heartbreaking honesty that her daughter was in with a crowd led by Charles Manson. This wasn't a rumor. It wasn't an exaggeration. Deirdre was dangerously close to a cult that would soon commit some of the most infamous murders in American history. The thought of losing her daughter not to drugs, not to rebellion, but to a manipulative, violent cult shook Angela to her core. She knew this wasn't a phase her daughter would simply outgrow. This was a crisis that demanded a drastic, immediate, life-altering response. And so, Angela Lansbury did something almost no star in her position would have done. She walked away from Hollywood and everything it offered. Angela Lansbury's decision to uproot her family overnight remains one of the most dramatic and courageous choices ever made by a Hollywood star. She wasn't escaping paparazzi. She wasn't escaping scandal. She was escaping a city that had sunk its claws into her children. Drug culture had nearly taken her son. Charles Manson's orbit had nearly claimed her daughter. Angela recognized what many parents refused to see. Los Angeles in the late 1960s wasn't just dangerous, it was predatory. And fame offered no protection. So she and Peter Shaw moved their family to rural Ireland, choosing safety over celebrity, healing over career momentum. It was a bold decision that shocked studios and stunned colleagues. Angela stopped accepting major acting roles, sacrificing the very thing she had built her life around. But what she gained was far greater peace, stability, and the chance to save her children's lives. Ireland was quiet, slow, and detached from the chaos consuming California. There, her children detoxed not just from substances, but from the seductive madness of Hollywood's darker currents. Angela later said she believed her children would have died if she hadn't removed them. That wasn't maternal fear, it was maternal intuition proven right by history. When Angela Lansbury finally stepped back into Hollywood, she didn't return like a star seeking relevance. She returned like a woman who had walked through fire and come out forged into steel. The Angela who left was talented. The Angela who came back was unstoppable. Her acting carried a new sharpness, a new precision, as if every heartbreak and every battle she'd survived had carved her into a more formidable force. Broadway sensed it immediately. The stage embraced her with open arms, handing her roles that demanded emotional depth, comedic timing, and the kind of presence only a survivor could command. Audiences didn't just applaud, they felt her. But the true turning point arrived when television came calling. Murder, She Wrote, was never meant to be a phenomenon. It was supposed to be a pleasant mystery series, something light and comforting. Angela transformed it into a cultural cornerstone. Jessica Fletcher wasn't just another TV character. She became a symbol, a quiet revolution. Through her, Angela proved that intelligence doesn't fade with age, that charm doesn't belong only to the young, and that confidence grows from experience, not vanity. Week after week, millions of viewers tuned in not only for the cleverly crafted mysteries, but for the woman at the center of them. Angela carried the show with an authority that no script could manufacture. She didn't act poise, she embodied it. She didn't pretend understanding, she earned it. Her return wasn't simply a comeback. It was a declaration to Hollywood and the world. The hardest chapters of life do not break a person, they forge them into legends. Angela Lansbury's legacy isn't defined by her awards, her roles, or her fame. It is defined by the battles she fought when the cameras weren't rolling. She survived the heartbreak of a gay marriage in a time of silence. She raised children through addiction, danger, and near disaster. She outsmarted one of the most dangerous men of the 20th century by removing her daughter from his influence. She quit smoking, endured surgeries, and faced the ravages of time with honesty and dignity. And through it all, she kept working, kept evolving, kept winning. By the time she passed at age 96, Angela had outlived the studios that doubted her, the systems that typecast her, and the darkness that tried to swallow her family whole. She became more than a star, she became a survivor, an icon, a blueprint for how to live with strength, grace, and unshakable resolve. Her story isn't extraordinary because she was famous. Her story is extraordinary because she remained human in a world that demanded artifice. And the deeper you look into her life, the more you realize that Angela Lansbury didn't just play heroes, she lived like one. Hollywood loves to celebrate the glamorous, the scandalous, the loud. But Angela's life was a reminder that the quiet warriors, the ones who fight in silence, who protect their families at all costs, who rebuild themselves after heartbreak, are often the ones who leave the deepest mark on the world. She faced the kind of trials that would have broken most people. A marriage shattered by a truth she was too young to understand, children pulled toward the darkest corners of 1962 Los Angeles, and the crushing fear that fame was devouring her family from the inside out. Yet every time life tried to corner her, Angela answered with courage. She left Hollywood when it was poisoning her children. She came back stronger than before. She reinvented herself again and again, never bending to the timelines or expectations that the industry placed on women. And perhaps that is her greatest triumph. Angela Lansbury did not just survive Hollywood, she outlasted it. She became a symbol of intelligence, of grace, of resilience. She proved that age is not a limitation but a weapon, that experience gives a performer depth no training can replicate, and that a woman can command an entire generation simply by showing the world who she truly is. When she passed at 96, the tributes weren't just for an actress, they were for a life fully lived, a mother who saved her children, a performer who saved her art, a woman who saved herself, and now, her story belongs to all of us. The viewers who grew up with her, admired her, and now understand the battles she fought behind every elegant smile. If Angela Lansbury's journey moved you, inspired you, or surprised you, don't let it end here. Hit like, share this video with someone who remembers her, and subscribe to uncover more untold Hollywood stories, stories buried by studios, forgotten by time, and too powerful to stay hidden.